Hey everybody, Average Picker here. I started to make a video last night. Yeah, so I did what I told myself I was not going to do. But I went ahead and did it. From Lockpick World. This is it. I mean, this is the first. I've not opened this. Multipick. It's their Dimple pick set. Yeah, so it's about $200. And yeah, I swore I was never gonna spend something like that on picks, and yet here we are opening this on video. So yeah, the video itself was a bit of a rambling mess, but I still do want to kind of do a first impressions video on the Multipick Dimple pick set that is now in my collection. And I've had a few hours now to kind of play around with it and things like that. So not really a review, more of just what do I think after owning it for a short, brief period of time. And we're going to start with kind of some stuff I don't like about it, and we'll move into stuff that I do like about it. And we're not going to sit and go over and look at each individual pick or anything like that. There's plenty of other reviews that do that, and you can see these in plenty of other reviews in greater detail. We will flip the camera around though, just so that they're kind of here and you can see them, and go from there. All right, let's do it. So let's start with the case. Now, I both don't really care about cases, and I am picky about cases. This case is pretty nice. It's nice leather. It seems to be all rightish made. It's not going to fall apart in a week. Good enough. And of course, it's one of these kind of partial roll cases. Flap at the bottom, flap at the top, and this is where things start that I don't like about the case. This is a little bit picky, I know. It's got an extra little empty slot here, and that's all well and good, but it, you know, when you first unroll it, you can't help but wonder, if you don't already know about it, did they leave something out? Do I need to check my order? What was supposed to be here? It's just one of those little things. Of course, this is the way it comes. It is complete. It just has this little empty slot here. You can put, I guess, something else in there if you want to. It does hold these picks in that slot. This one actually is for, it's just a little piece of foam up in there. I'm sure you can kind of see, there you go. And it just holds the little wrench, basically, that will take the tips out. But yeah, it's a little disconcerting if you don't know that it's going to be there to all of a sudden find that. It's got a little pocket over here that holds the tensioners. Fine, whatever. This top flap, I hate it. Now I know it's supposed to, I don't know, it's supposed to be nicer, keeps things in there, whatever. I like my picks to be accessible, and sometimes I like to change picks mid-picking, and this case just is not conducive for that. You know, like if you're trying to hold tension on a lock and you think, oh, what I really need is something a little bit higher lifting capability than what I've been using, and you don't want to lose your spot in the lock, you know, getting over in here and fumbling through getting this flap up because you don't want to catch the tip of the pick, you know, and risk bending it against there and trying to pry it out. They're very snugly held, which is good. You don't, you know, if you're traveling, you don't want your picks to fall out. But yeah, trying to deal with that flap and not catch this, they're just not, it's not conducive to getting them in and out of there. It's the same with putting them back in. You have to kind of, it's just sort of a pain. I kind of hate that flap, but that's all case stuff, and that's easily solved by just simply taking them out of this and tossing them up onto something else, or just laying them out. So whatever, case picky, you know, and at the same time, I just don't care about the case. So let's talk about the picks themselves and what I don't like. And I'm going to put a little asterisk on this one. They're quite lightweight. Looking in videos, I really thought they would have a little more heft to them. Something maybe closer in weight to the Southford or to the Honest Dong. It's got a nice little weight to it. And it's a slightly bit short. It's not as short as the Southford. It's is. And I found this quite comfortable to pick with, but this is also a little bit fatter And these are pretty, well, the Multipicks are pretty narrow. You can see there, just if we're dealing with the handle part. So far it hasn't proven to be that big of a deal. The little rubber catches do a good job of giving you, good control over it and everything. But yeah, looking at videos, I thought it'd be just a little heftier, I guess. But I'm not one of those people that just associates heft with quality either. So I'm putting an asterisk beside this one, and we're gonna come back to it though when we get into some of the stuff I do like about it, and we'll explain that then. Okay, so what's the other thing I don't like about them? Well, I'm gonna say it, the price. The price is quite steep, and we'll come back and talk about that at the end of this video. Let's move into some of the stuff I do like about them though. So the finish is really quite nice. These are very usable straight out of the box. No problems there. Now, at least with my set, if you kind of give them a roll, some of them feel a little more rounded off than others. This one is pretty round. There's a few in here you can kind of feel where it feels like it used to be rectangular, but it's finished so well, it didn't make any difference at all, really. So yeah, very nicely all touched up and done. Now, I had wondered how stiff the Dimple picks were. That was one of my big concerns, because what I was finding was the Southford ones, I liked it. I liked how stiff they were. That wobble that you might be seeing there is really just because it's not very tight right now down in here. But they're so thick. And these I liked. Again, they pretty good solid feel in there. The Sparrow, this is the dong set. The Sparrow's quite flexible, and it always felt weak to me. And I'm happy to say that the Multi sits very firmly there in the middle. It is now, at least my Honest dongs are stiff but bendy and malleable, so they do tend to stay bent. Mine do anyway. I don't know about all of them. I suspect the metal quality on these kind of varies from pack to pack. But yeah, the Sparrow's quite flappy. Not much. It's good, solid, right in between there. It is pretty much exactly what I wanted and had hoped it was going to be. Not too much flex, but yet still quite narrow and well done in there. So love it. That was my biggest issue, and I had this fear that you had to either get really flexible and bendy, or it was going to be too thick and stiff. And they've worked it out. They're just absolutely great. Now, I did take one of them and I gave it a pretty good crank, and it does bend. It comes back pretty much into shape, and you can then kind of just run your finger along it and get it right back into form pretty quickly. So yeah, kind of a bold move, but I just was kind of curious. Especially I can tend to sometimes really put too much pressure on. I know that's one of my bad habits with them. So yeah, I was concerned about that, but it's nice. The feedback, I could not be happier with the feedback, really. That was one of the things I really liked about the Southford picks. And I think I mentioned those in a kind of a first impression video. It really felt like I knew where I was in the Dimple lock, and it was very easy for me to get and know when I was squared off nice and evenly underneath the pins, and I really, really liked that. But again, these were just being hampered a little bit, like something was getting in the way, and probably because it is so thick. The Multipicks have that exact same great little bit of feedback to them. You can tell when you're under the pin, when it's squared off under there, when you're getting a good solid lift. All of that transmits very well through the pick, and I love it. I tried all of them out kind of in various amounts of time, and they all felt equally snappy and everything. And yeah, there was just, I knew where I was, what was going on. Could feel, oh, I might be a little bit in between a couple of the pins. I might be slightly off center. Could feel it all in the multi. Fantastic, love it. That was really the other big thing I was hoping for out of them. I wanted that kind of feedback in this kind of pick and got it. So yeah, cannot heap enough of goodness on that part of it, because that's really what it is about, is lifting those pins, and you can tell exactly kind of where you are in the lock and what's going on with it, and really good feeling from it. And this is where I'm going to come back to talking about the handle. So, because I said I was going to attach a little bit of an asterisk to it. Yeah, I wish the handle was a little bit fatter, or a tiny bit longer. Like I said, I would go for thickness better. I don't know if making that handle a little bit thicker would cause it to lose some of that feedback. For all I know, they tried some thicker handles and they got it to this, and that's what gives it some of the superb feedback. I am a little bit leaning towards, yeah, you could probably make the handle a bit thicker and still retain all of that great feedback it gives you, just because the South Forward handle does manage to pretty much do that. I mean, if I had to say which one gives better feedback, it's the multi, no doubt. This one's pretty good. And but I'm thinking it's more of the shaft, it's more of the pick itself just being kind of thick that might dull it just a tiny bit more than this one. And so I feel like you could come up on the handle a little bit, just make that handle a little bit beefier. But I don't know, I'm not an expert on these, and I'm not an expert or that great at picking dimple picks or dimple locks. So yeah, whatever they're doing, it's working pretty well. And if I really had to trade off, yeah, I could lose a little bit of the feedback and get a little bit thicker handle. I can work with this. I will take the feedback any day over, if I had to choose between one or the other. I don't really know if you have to do that manufacturing wise. It feels like you could probably come up on the handle some and still keep it. But yeah, I wouldn't want to risk losing the feedback just because I feel like the handle's a little bit too small, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about price, because they are expensive. Base price is about $200-ish, and you get 10 picks and the 3 tensioners. I'm going to point out, I've got so many tensioners at this point, I'm not that focused on these, but these are pretty cool because you've got the tapered sides. Well, I got that one. You've got tapered sides, and you've got just standard straighted sides on them, and that's kind of cool. They can kind of do double duty that way. So yeah, the 10 picks and the 3 tensioners and the case at $200. I kind of almost tend to think of the tensioners as a little bit of a throwaway, though these are pretty good quality tensioners. So it's a little bit unfair of me. But yeah, so we're popping out at what, $20 a pick, essentially. I don't know. I feel like it's a little too much. Honestly, I would rather not have the case if it was going to save me a little bit more money on the picks, because what I'm interested in is the picks. That's it. Everything else is superficial for me. So the complaints I have about the case, I can just toss those kind of out. But do I really need this nice of a case? No, not in my opinion, I don't. And if that's going to save me, even $20, I would rather save that $20 and not have the case. Just chuck them in a box or something. But yeah, I mean, they are steep. I can't get around that the price is steep. Now, I will say, I think I now own pretty much all the major Dimple pick sets. I've got the Honest Dongs, I've got the Sparrows, and I've got the South Fords, and now these. And these are by far the superior one, at least in what few hours I've had with them and the little bit of time I've spent with them, trying them in a variety of locks. So yeah, it's a premium price for what I would say arguably is the best Dimple pick right now. Yeah, but it feels high. Now, I think I'm kind of known for being a little bit frugal and a little bit cheap, and I'm always trying to come up with cheap options for you all. And so, for your more frugal-minded viewers who are probably balking at the price of them, I don't blame you. I perfectly understand that. What I did though was I decided I did want them. And I just was mentally setting aside money pretty much for them and planning to get them in the future. And then once I had that money kind of set aside and I knew it was there, I waited a little bit longer. I looked at them some more. I read some more reviews. I waited to see, is there any situations coming up with maybe the house or something that's going to have to be dealt with? Is there let me go check the roof. Is it leaking? Is there any expenses on the horizon that's going to just kill me right now? And I decided, no, there's not. Good to go. Got the money set aside. I've already kind of forgotten it's there. I've been operating without it. Let's pull the trigger and get them. So that's what I did. And sometimes that's just what you've got to do in any hobby, right? You just got to kind of set aside the money and say, hey, I'm going to go for it. And that's what I did. But yeah, at the same time, if I had to just peg it to value, I just don't know, guys. I really don't. And I'm being completely honest. I know people are going to say, oh yeah, it's a premium product at a premium price. And that's true, but it's still hard to look at something and say, man, that's $20 there, which makes it almost seem cheap. If I could just buy one at 20, I probably would. It's buying all of them at the 200 mark where it just starts to give you that kind of ouch standpoint. But obviously they are selling at that, and people buy them and people enjoy them, and I certainly bought them. And I'm not having buyer's remorse or regret on it. I prepared to do it and I did it. So weigh all of that as you will. All I can say is, yes, so far my little bit of time with them, they are great. It's got all the qualities I was hoping to find in a Dimple pick. And I had even gone so far, I don't know if I still have one of my bad examples over here. Let's see it, I may have moved it. I even started to go so far as to try to make my own, just from feeler gauge stock. And that was getting to be a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, all the qualities I was hoping for in them. And there we go. So just a quick little rundown once more, looking at the 4 of the major ones. Where does it sit? Yeah, the feedback, it wins for feedback. Edges out the South Ford, in my opinion, which I think just does have some really good feedback. The dimensions itself of the actual, picking shank and everything, hands down wins. I mean, the South Ford, way too thick. Yeah, I know you can work them and all of that stuff, but yeah, this just takes the cake. And as well as far as the just kind of strength and flexibility and things in them, it wins hands down. It's got quite a surprising amount of strength to it for how thin it is when you compare it to the other options, which either make up and gain some of that strength by being thick, or they just go for whatever flexibility is going to be there and they let it stand at that. So yeah, it comes out on top. I mean, as far as all of that goes, no question. Now, I've talked about feedback and stuff, and I want to say moving in and out of the lock and kind of around the pins and underneath them and things like that. Yeah, the Multipick takes the cake on that. Like I said, I'd always felt like could feel with the South Ford pretty good where I was at, and that feedback was really great, but they are a little bit too thick. And what I'd found myself starting to do was I was practicing on the Honest Dong ones because I don't really care about those as much. But I was starting to find myself trying to taper, almost making a wedge out of the front portion of the pick there, because sometimes you get those really low sitting dimple pins and they lock themselves down pretty well, and at least when you're new, you find yourself almost trying to do like a gouge, like you're trying to gouge the pin up just so you can get this underneath. And I have not really run into that problem with the Multipick. It has gotten under there without any real problems, and it's probably because the pick is so nicely finished and it is so thin while retaining its rigidity. Like you're almost brute force digging your way up, and you're having to do more of a lift. You're going to get naturally just because these picks are so thick, right? So what I was finding was when I did kind of wedge down and wedge shape the tip of the pick, yeah, it was getting under there a lot nicer, but just due to the overall thickness of them, they were tending to lift more than I really wanted to, uncontrollably, just because they are thicker. It was pushing that pin up more, even without me doing anything. Almost a little bit more like a raking action, but one that you don't have a whole lot of control over. Have not had this problem. As far as them getting hung up, one of the things I had said I liked about the Dong and the South Ford was sometimes I'd lose my orientation, but because they're flat picks, you could reorientate and figure out where you were at as far as where the flag portion was, and that could also often help you retract it. Not really had that much issue with these, partly because they are probably so finished. I will say, if you are real prone to going too deep into the lock, which a lot of newcomers I think do tend to do, even on regular locks, because these are so finished and they are so thin, you can get in a little bit of trouble. I intentionally jammed a couple of these down pretty deeply into an RB Dimple lock. It's actually here in the clamp. And yeah, you can get into some nooks and crannies back in this portion that are almost impossible. I don't want to say impossible, but are much more difficult with those. So you've got to be a little more conscious of your depth, because if you get this pick in there, you can get it into some weird places and get it turned and have difficulty getting it out. But as long as you're sticking around the pins where you should be, it doesn't really jam up like some of the other dimple picks are prone to doing. It almost feels like a few of these you can jam in between the pins or in the warding. There's some place they tend to stick a little bit, and then you find yourself having to back out and kind of jiggle it a little bit and get it out. Did not have this problem with these. The only time I got these really, what I would say, proper stuck, I was inappropriately back in the lock way too far. But that is a newbie mistake, so it is something to look out for. So yeah, there we go. I think this video is running a little bit long. I know that. Whatever. I do kind of apologize. Maybe you've made it this far through. But yeah, there is my little, essentially, first impression of the Multipick Dimple Pick set. Yeah, a little pricey. Yes. Am I happy with it? Quite happy with it. So we're going to come back and pick some challenge locks later today. But in the meantime, you all have a good one.